Hey, Jeff here. So, an exciting day, an exciting day, an exciting day. Why is today exciting? Today's exciting because today is the first day in about a month and a half to 2 months that everything that I had in the U.S. Postal Service mailing has arrived. They have finally caught up on everything that I had in the service. Well, there is one package. It was mailed in mid-December, but it's not music. So let me rephrase that. Every piece of music that I had ordered from November, from prior to Black Friday, to Black Friday, through December, middle of December, end of year, everything that I've ordered so far has arrived. Only other packages out there is one that I did buy from overseas. No telling when that'll be here. It was ordered and shipped in early December, but hey, I'm not holding that accountable. Anyway, everything arrived. Last thing that came that had been out there for a couple weeks now was some stuff that I bought closer to the end of year sale, and it's some CDs. So let's get going. One of the things that took a few weeks to get here that arrived a couple days ago is this one from My Silent Wake. Now, I showed two other My Silent Wake albums that I did receive that I purchased on Black Friday sale. And actually it was the week before. That was one of the ones that took a long time to get here. And so if you remember that video, fine. If you don't, My Silent Wake is a UK band that is a doom, death, metal type band. Not so deathy that I don't really like the vocal style, and but they've got that doom sound. So, and I had also mentioned how quite a few of their albums have went into more of an atmospheric, instrumental, not even doom, not really metal. They have a couple albums like that, acoustic at times, whole albums. And so they do vary, but in the early days it was mostly all the same, the death doom. This is one of their earlier releases. It came out on CD, then it was later, a handful of years later, reissued on vinyl with a slight change up and song order and all that. So it's really kind of labeled as a different album, but it's sort of basically the same as the original. I'm not sure if it was re-recorded, not re-recorded, but remixed or anything. But it's one of the ones that's floating out there that I was able to get for a decent price. A couple of the other ones they have that are available on vinyl tend to be, imports. And so they either cost a lot or they cost a lot to ship. So I haven't got those yet. But there are a few that I have my eyes on. Up next was just a little quickie from Amazon. And it was another one of those Amazon deals where I'm watching my list and all of a sudden it drops to the $15 range. And so I go ahead and scoop it up. Nothing super major. It is a Michael Shanker. It is Decade of a Mad Axeman. Now this is this was a CD that was put out, and it was a compilation of live tracks on one CD and studio tracks on the other, basically pulling from a handful of recent albums. So it's got everything from the Michael Shanker Fest to the Temple of Rock, and and then Michael Shanker Band itself. So what they did with the vinyl is they released it as a two-set. This is the live recordings, and then there's one called the studio recording. So you've got the CD on 4 different vinyl releases. 4 different vinyl records, 2 different releases. I picked up the live one because it did drop in price. Keep an eye on the other. Now, I have, not on vinyl, but I have all of their albums. But the vinyl issues of the 4 live albums, let me show you. It's made up of 4 live albums, and it tells you which ones they're pulled from here. You can see those if I can get back far enough. So, you've got these. Now, the live albums that these come from are, at this point at least, and looking at them, they're hard to find on vinyl for a decent price. So I don't know if I'll ever track down the vinyl issues of those albums, so this will be good in the meantime. And the same goes with the studio tracks, I think, since I've got the more recent ones. But anyway, so it was a good, it's a good little way to get a bunch of good live tracks. Some of the more modern stuff. Now, next was the package that came in today of CDs. I got these and a couple weeks ago, and they were shipped, and then of course they got held up, and they're finally here. So first, let's talk about our man Scott Waters. We've got Ultimatum, Lex Metalis. Now, this came out in 2019. I held off on it because I already had it. This is a reissue. So, they do this to you. So this was a 2009 release on Retroactive Records. 10 years later, 2019 is the 10th anniversary edition. It's got 2 extra tracks on it. It is a covers album by the band, and they do covers of a bunch of different bands. And so they have they've added 2 new ones. And again, it was a year-end sale, really inexpensive. That's when I tend to jump on buying things that I kind of passed up on in the day. And so I was going ahead and get that. So now I can move this one along to somebody who is interested in checking out Ultimatum. If you're a subscriber to Scott Waters' channel, I'm sure you've heard of them quite a bit. He's the vocalist here. Anyway, so yeah, it's updated with a bunch of extra songs and stuff. So 2 extra songs. Great stuff. Now here's a band that I've been listening to for quite a few years. I have digital tracks of most of their stuff, but never did I actually purchase the physical CDs, and I'm not sure exactly why. The first earlier stuff they did, I've had them on my wish list. They just never came up in price, so I've had them digitally and have just listened to them. So again, the price dropped, so I grabbed it. Chaotic Resemblance. Now, Chaotic Resemblance it's one of the new wave of traditional heavy metal type bands. Think in the regular market, you could think of bands like Crazy Licks, or there's a lot of them. Steel Panther, if you want to think about that, though, these guys would fall into the category of Christian metal. This was produced by Oz Fox of Stryper, but it's not overly. It's not like early Stryper Jesus music where it's all preachy. It's just cool stuff, and they've got the look. And they've got the sound, and the window is causing quite a glare. You can see them rocking there. Check them out. This is actually the 2014 release. They have had a new one in 2018, which I have the tracks for, have listened to quite a bit, but again, I don't have the physical product, and if it dropped, I would have bought that. And then they have some EPs that came out before this. Check them out. Chaotic Resemblance. Cool stuff. Okay, and next up was, and I had mentioned this in a previous video because this is another one of those retroactive records reissues of a band that existed in the late 70s on into the early 90s. They released 3 albums. I had their first album that retroactive released a handful of years ago. Somehow didn't pick up the second and third, so I think it was somewhere in the Black Friday sale. I picked up the second album, and I'm like, why didn't I pick up the third at the same time? So I rectified that by getting the third one during the year-end sale. And we're talking Gideons Army, Grace. Now they are a hard rock. They are in the Christian realm. Like I said, they started off in the 70s, late 70s, and they had that 70s vibe with the kind of horns and stuff. But then by the time they came around with Rock and Roll for Your Soul, they had there's still some of that element in here. This is what, 1982. And so they have a little bit of that flair. I would say this would be classified as kind of a rock, AOR, along that line, keyboard-driven rock. I think, so that's the first album. That's the one that I've had for a handful of years. It's part of the Legends Remastered series, and it came out in 2015. So then, okay, these actually came out at different times. I don't think I realized that. This is released in 2013. This is 1985's Warriors of Love. Now, this is the only Gideon's Army album back in the day, in '85, that I ever owned. I saw this advertised in magazines, and tell me that doesn't look like some kind of a heavy metal album right there. That is just, got a flying V, and it's getting struck by lightning. And I scooped this album up only to find out that it's more keyboard-driven AOR rock. Still liked it, still listened to it, but at the time, in '85, when you're listening to all that is metal, this was kind of light rock. Still liked it, still loved it. So it was great to see this out on CD, remastered and everything changed up. So yes, this was a 2013 release, so I guess they did come out of order. And then this is, again, this is the one, Grace, that I picked up. And this was also 2015, originally released in 1990. It's kind of the same as Warriors of Love, but I find that at least when you first start listening to it, the guitars are a little more predominant, and then all of a sudden the keyboards kick in and it kind of gets that AOR feel again. But for the most part, both this and Warriors of Love have a standard, gritty guitar, and there's just some good, hard rockin' music of the 80s that you would think is going to be that sound. Now, this last one was one that I took a chance on. I had read about it. I don't think I ever checked out the sound, any of their videos of their sound, but because of what people were involved, I thought I'd give it a shot. Now, I got this today, and I listened to it already, and I'm thinking, wow, this is not anything like I expected. I didn't really read much about it, but I was blown away. Totally unexpected release. It's John Degroff and Friends. The album's called Salt. Now it also says featuring John Slitt. Now, John Slitt was the longtime singer for Petra. He took over in the mid-'80s and until the band pretty much stopped, had been the singer. John Slitt is also formerly the singer of Head East. If you're familiar with them, they're a band from the 70s, traditional, standard rock band from the 70s. And he did join Petra in 80s, a Christian band. And Petra, is well known for being one of the first really Christian rock bands. And he did that long term. He's done a lot of things since then, and he's appearing on this with these. Now, John Degroff is the original bass player from Petra. And I'm talking from like the first 2 albums before they really went rocky. They had a whole different sound, very 70s, early 70s sound. And then they started getting a little more rockier, and it went from there to where they became really hard rock. Now, this stuff, he's the bass player. It's very bass heavy, bass predominant. But the styles that are contained on here are everything from a rock sound to a jazz sound, a jazz fusion. I'm getting a 70s vibe, a prog vibe. So, think 70s prog with a little jazz touch. I hear the Doors musically a little bit with the keyboards and stuff. I hear Stanley Clarke, jazz fusion, jazz. The bass is just, he is all over this bass. And then when the songs kick in with vocals, it's just sounding like something out of the 70s, like a Gentle Giant or something. And maybe not quite as prog as like a Gentle Giant or, those 70s bands like Yes and stuff. But still got a lot of instrumentation, heavy bass, a lot of different sounds in here. This really kind of blew me away. I wasn't expecting that. I really was expecting something just kind of a John Slitt rockin' stuff. They have a second album that's advertised as being out. I'm definitely going to be checking that out because this is just, it's a change of pace. I like jazz fusion. I like bass heavy stuff. I like Stanley Clarke. I like all of that kind of stuff. So everything about this was awesome. Some of the songs are instrumental and it's just like, wow. And then some of them are kind of, the vocals pop in and it's, proggy sounding. So yeah, check it out. It is on Rottweiler Records. You'll be able to find it online. John Degroff and Friends. Anyway, that's what came in. That's it for now, though. Thanks for watching. Rock on.